We are live. We are live. Hello and welcome back to True Thursday. I hope you are ready for the holiday, gearing up for the holiday, feeling prepared for some relaxation, family time, and the holiday. Today, I'm really excited to talk about the 3 things that you get to leave behind if you choose. The 3 things that you can leave behind in 2022 to step into the most empowered, best version of yourself. You see, we first need to look at the things that we need to leave behind before we can start really building the life and what we want. And so today we're going to dive into these three things. And I want you to, as I'm going through these things, really think about both your personal and your professional life. How do you see these things showing up personally and professionally? Because wherever you are, there you are, right? The things that are coming up personally are affecting you professionally. So for me, I was gearing up for my end of year planning a few months ago and felt a different energy towards my year end planning. So for me, a little bit about me is I love goal setting. I am known as an enterpriser. I love building businesses. I love creating ideas and executing on those ideas. What I realized was that there was this different energy that I had towards really setting concrete and committed plans as I was starting this planning session earlier this year. And it sort of got me into this state of contemplation. What was going on? Was it decision fatigue? Was I ready for a holiday, a vacation? What was sort of the block between me and this excitement for setting goals? Had I hit a wall where maybe obviously, I fail all the time. Had I had so many failures that it was just tripping me up? So I started to really look at where I was coming from in my goal setting and planning. And it dawned on me that I had been setting goals for me and me alone up to a certain point. But when my goals and my aspirations got past that thermostat level of goodness that we all have, right? We all have our different levels that we allow ourselves to experience, that I started to attach a reason for the desire or the ambition. In other words, I was setting my goals, but when I would explain them to the public or my friends, family, I would explain why I was going for this goal, why I was pursuing this desire. And it hit me that I was actually pursuing this desire contingent upon something, right? I was saying, for example, I want to build a business to this level because that's when the charitable work can start. That's when we can start giving back. And I want to be clear, the reason we do things, there's always that piece of we want to build something bigger than ourselves. We want to make that impact. We want to use our influence for impact, right? And to make the world a better place. But when we associate reasons, when we attach a reason to why we're achieving what we're achieving, sometimes that can start to feel heavy, almost like a burden. And so I went to my think tank, as I say it, and I really just started to contemplate, where was I coming from and why was that getting in my way? Excuse me. And so I realized I was in what I like to call codependent creation, which means I was creating my goals based on something externally. And so I want you to look at your life. Is there anywhere in your personal and professional life where you're creating for an external reason? And I don't mean the success, the money, the achievement. I mean because something external, whether it's it's going to benefit this person or I'm responsible for these people, because that can start to weigh on you and get in the way of creating from a beautiful inner state and really creating what you want. And so that brings me to the 3 things that you need to leave in 2022 to really step into all that you are meant to be next year. When you can look at these 3 things I'm going to go into next and really be honest with yourself, be candid with yourself, and be willing to see where these things are showing up, an immense amount of energy and clarity is going to return. I know that was my experience. My experience was as soon as I was seeing that I was exhausted, right, because I was creating for these external reasons, I could come back to the drawing board and really connect to my goals for the only reason that they're my goals and what I'm passionate about versus creating for an external purpose. So here are the top 3. So the first one I want you to look at, and I encourage you to leave behind in 2022, is justification. So what I mean by justification is, where are you justifying why you're as big, bold, and amazing as you are? Wherever you're justifying why you're doing what you're doing, wherever you are saying, I'm doing this for that, that's the biggest indicator, is when we can see that there is a condition after we say what we want. If you're willing to look at justification and leave that behind this year, what that does is it allows you to come from a more purposeful, intentional, and creative space, because you're not explaining yourself. You're not justifying why you're doing what you're doing. There's no excuses. There's no explanation, especially for women leaders, for women business owners. We are naturally nurturers, right? That's who we are in our DNA. We are caregivers. That's where we come from. And so it's very easy to build our businesses and build our lives for others. It's very easy to build our lives based upon what we think is going to be the best for others or our team or our families. And while that is a part of the equation, what I'm saying to you today is when you can start first from a connection of what you want versus starting externally for who you're doing it for, you're going to see much more power and energy return to you and clarity to build than if you're doing it the other way. So a takeaway from this first item: look at your personal life and look at your business. Are you justifying, explaining, excusing yourself or anyone else? And if you can assess that, evaluate that, and commit to changing that, you're going to see an immense amount of energy return to you so that you can create more purposefully. The next one is obligation. Look at your business and personal life. Where are you operating in obligation? Where are you doing things because you think you should, or doing things because at one point you could have done them and so you want to make up for that in the past? Where are you operating in things because you think you have to? That is not true. And when you can start to, again, assess this, you can start to become more purposeful instead of operating in a sense of obligation. Now, let's clarify something. Obligation, we all have obligations, responsibilities, right? There's a distinction I want you to make between obligation and responsibility. And actually, I want to take it a step further. I want to make a distinction between obligation, responsibility, and ownership. When you're operating in obligation, you are operating as if things are happening to you. You could choose responsibility of the same task and bring a completely different energy to it. But if you choose ownership, you own whatever it is, and you operate in the most powerful energy when you're in ownership. So I want to make that distinction because it's a big one. When we're operating in obligation, we have a lower energy. Oh, I have to take care of this, right? It is a burden. So think, where do I feel burdened? That is where you're in obligation. You can easily take responsibility, but it's not as powerful as ownership. When you show up to life with ridiculous ownership. When you show up to life in ownership, nothing can get in your way. It is decision and execution. So think of those three. Think of obligation, the middle of the road is responsibility, and ownership is the ultimate destination. You want to leave obligation behind because, again, if we look at all three, obligation, responsibility, and ownership, you could choose to use either three of these energies doing the same task, but the way you feel the entire time is completely different. The outcome of the result or the result of the task is going to likely be different because you're bringing all of yourself to the table in ownership versus bringing a part of yourself in obligation because you really don't want to be doing it. And so you bring that energy. Well, when you invest that kind of energy, what kind of withdrawals do you think you're going to take out? They're not great, right? When you bring ownership to the table, you can expect that you'll complete whatever needs to be done and be able to take the high road energetically throughout the process and probably make something of the whole situation because you chose to operate in the frequency of ownership versus the frequency of obligation. So where are you burdened right now? Where are you looking at your life as if maybe there's no choice? Where are you looking at areas of your life where you feel it's happening to you? Move from obligation to ownership in that area and watch how that area of your life in 2023 completely changes. The last thing I want you to look at as we wrap up 2022 is your tolerations. This can be such a powerful exercise to ask yourself, what are you tolerating? What is it that you're putting up with? When you can take a look at what you're putting up with, it's very much the sister, if you will, to obligation, right? When you can look at where you're tolerating things, we are not fully choosing the way you want your life to go, you immediately bring a level of awareness to the table. And with awareness comes true change. So when you can see, whether it's, like I said before, obligation or toleration, when you can see these things, really take a look at yourself without judgment and choose the way that you're going to move forward more intentionally. You are going to really call back a large amount of energy so that you can not only plan and set the goals that you want to achieve for next year, but actually dive into what are the steps that are actually going to help me fulfill what it is that I want. Because you're not going to have the distractions of justification, obligation, and toleration. Those three things left behind allow you to be intentional, allow you to be in full ownership and bring that level of energy, bring the level of conviction to the table that your goals in 2023 require of you, right? It's this whole idea, if you want different results, you have to change, you have to do something different. And these three items can really give you insight of maybe what you haven't looked at yet, maybe some things that you haven't been willing to face. And if you're willing to face them, these are the keys to the kingdom or the queendom that can help you really make change and finally achieve what you want to achieve next year. So the best way to do this assessment is set aside 10 minutes and write down the words on a quick notepad: justification, obligation, and toleration. And ask yourself, where is this showing up in my personal and professional life? And just do a free write. Allow your brain to tell you, show you where these behaviors are showing up. And once you become aware of it, then each item that you're aware of, maybe it's in your relationship, maybe it's in your marriage, maybe it's with a coworker at the office or your virtual office, whatever the case may be, then create a clear outcome, a clear way that you're going to shift into ownership. So shift from justification into owning what you want. Shift from obligation into owning how you're going to show up to the world and to what you want. And then toleration to owning that the way that you're going to interact with others and the way you're going to show up to, clients and opportunity is going to be consistent with what achieves your goals. So have fun with this, dive into it. And again, look at these things without judgment. The more compassion you bring to the table, the easier you're going to see your brain sort of like unclutch and allow you to move through this transformation of seeing where you're at with these three things and being able to more intentionally create in 2023. So join me next week. I'm excited to wrap up as we'll get past Christmas, right? It's crazy. I can't even believe Christmas is this week. But as we set up for going into 2023, it's a new page. It's just a new opportunity in so many ways. And so I'll be going through some more tools and tips to help you prepare to make it your best year yet. So we'll see you next week, same time, same place.